Just a quick forward, I'll put timestamps in the description and the studio stuffs at the end. Welcome back to Hoochos. As you can see, the area I live in is in flood again. And that means one thing: way too much moisture in the greenhouse. In addition to all the wet weather we've been having, I've actually been hit with COVID as well. So that's why there's been a lax in videos at the moment, which I apologize for. So this is actually the third time my region is flooded in the year. And over the last couple of weeks, we've had hundreds of millimeters of rain in the catchment, which has caused this flooding. But it's also caused a heap of problems throughout my hydroponic systems and greenhouse. One of the problems actually came as quite a surprise to me. That is ants trying to find a dry place to lay their eggs. And apparently, one of the driest places in the greenhouse is my electrical box. You can see here I've actually cut off these two eggplant, and that is because I've had a massive aphid problem. I've just noticed a bloody grasshopper, little bugger. And that aphid problem has been because the ants have actually been importing the aphids into the greenhouse again. So I'm not sure how to get around this problem. I might have to treat the outside of the greenhouse with a barrier, but I'll show you. That is a large colony of ants that has been living in my electrical box. They have been importing, there's actually a whole colony of insects living off these aphids. This is what they've been importing. There is just so much wrong here. And you can see I've had to remove a heap of these eggplants. A few of them weren't affected by aphids, but they were actually affected by a browning of the leaves. And I'm pretty sure this is viral, and it's being spread by whitefly, which I've got over in the tomatoes. And that's not all that's in the tomatoes. As you can see here, I have a massive mold issue in the tomatoes. So I'll be coming through and removing all of the badly affected tomato bushes. I'm going to harvest as much fruit as possible. I'm going to replant them. I've got some seedlings in the studio, which we'll see a bit later. And I'm going to come up with a plan for this area because I think that I've used these bags. I reckon I might get a third use out of them, but I don't particularly want to put the same crop in them just in case there are any diseases in there that will transfer from one to the next. But it's not all bad news. I have been getting a ton of tomatoes off these plants. The NFT has been working a treat as usual. The problem here is that I left these get too leggy in my propagation area yet again. Also, I have multiple lettuce coming out of the plugs. Now, I actually did that on purpose because what I'll do is I'll come along and I'll harvest the smaller lettuce as I eat it. But because I had so much lettuce in the other system, I never got to do that. So they've just sort of built up, and this is going to be a problem later. And I'm not really happy with how they look. So I'll probably start feeding this side to the chickens. And you can see over this side where I've harvested most of the lettuce that was in here, and we've been eating that as we go. This cause has started to bolt, and this is iceberg that I've just been picking away at, but I'm going to do a clean of this system, and next time you see it I will have planted into that system with the stuff I'm propagating at the moment in the studio. Over in the corner here, we've got an absolute mess. These are broccoli, I'm pretty sure. We've got some tomatoes there that I was actually propagating, but I kind of left them to their own devices, and now they've sort of taken over the corner. There is a ton of mold in there because there's not much airflow throughout, and everything that falls onto the clay balls, if it sinks any amount, it's continually wet, which is a problem. I'll be clearing that out soon, and I'm probably just gonna have like a herb garden in there where I can have thyme in the corner there, and I've got some oregano propagating in my NFT ready for that corner. I'll also be doing a herb wall in the future, but I'll show you that when we get to the studio. Now, many of the same problems I'm having with the Dutch buckets as I was with the wick wedge hydroponic system. They are producing fantastically. I've got some beautiful fruits here and I'm super excited to eat them. But some of the pest problems are transferring over and I have that fungal issue because it's been so wet. So I'm going to take out some of these plants, the less healthy ones, try and give them some air. So I might remove every second one depending on the pattern of which ones are more healthy, and that'll give them some air in between them. And I'll also defoliate a little bit on the ones that I leave. And you can see down here I've taken out the micro toms that were here, and that is because they were just too small and bushy. The internals were not getting enough airflow. They just broke out in mold, exactly the same way that these micro toms down here have broken out in mold, and they're just spreading spores and disease, so I'm going to get rid of them. So over here we've got a ginger and turmeric system, which is an upcoming video, probably in the far future. Got our potato system. Now, the problem I've been having, again, is the rain. And I did not foresee this system filling up. I should have known because it's very similar to the float box hydroponic system. Whenever the float box fills up with rain, all I do is I just siphon it out with a piece of hose and it's absolutely fine. It will refill with nutrient. The problem with this one is that the entirety of the root mass for the potatoes is in the water. So I have to really keep on top of draining it out. I have not yet drained it out because the rain has actually been relentless. This is the first sunny day that we've had in over 2 weeks. So it's been really bad growing weather, and it has affected the float box system. A heap of pests damage and fungal damage throughout. That being said though, some of the plants are doing really well. In the back there, we've got a heap of pumpkins that have been running away from the system. Now, I'm actually not sure that that is to the credit of the float box hydroponic system so much as it is that they're throwing down roots in places that aren't usually wet and sucking up all of the nutrients. They are still attached to the float box, and I do think that they're getting a majority of nutrition from it and supplementing with the roots that they're throwing down across the length of the vine. Now, I think that's super interesting. It's just that I feel it would be misleading for me to say that, yeah, this is hydroponic. These guys though, these guys I am super excited about. They have just been going from strength to strength. This is the hydroponic Dragonfruit. They've grown up and over the top of the trellising that I created for them. They are shooting out tons of pups, I guess you'd call them, from the nodes just prior to where I've cut them. So I highly recommend that technique of cutting them. They just multiply exponentially back from the cut, and I've been super impressed with this system in its entirety. The cocoa and scoria is a perfect mix, and it does not require much maintenance at all. Literally no other input other than the hydroponic nutrient, which I feed them on a very sporadic basis, and during this whole wet weather event, I've not fed them at all. It is getting to the point where I'm going to start to recharge that cocoa right now, so I'll probably come through and water them with hydroponic nutrient this afternoon. Even with all the rain, the cocoa has been draining out perfectly, and because it's got that high CEC, it still holds on to the nutrient even though there's a ton of water traveling through it. So there's been a lot of stuff happening around the place. I got COVID at just the right time when all of the things started to happen at once. I just finished this catio for the cats when we decided that it was time to erect the studio, which was put up within a few days. And then our septic tank decided that it had enough. So we've had to dig a trench all the way down the back and renew the seepage pit. And while we did that, I decided to drop all the gutters from the sides of the house down the back to behind the shed, where we'll have our two 27,000 litre rainwater tanks that collect all of the water from the roof of our house and supply us with all the water that we use here on the property and all the water that I use for hydroponics. And this is the studio. As you can see, I've got a heap of stuff ready to go for the setup of the studio, and it's not quite done yet, but I thought I'd give you a look anyway. Come on in. Now it's a bit of a mess at the moment, and it will be a bit echoey for the time being because I have not got the walls on. I'm going to insulate and clad the walls so it's not 1,000 degrees Celsius in here, but I want to show you some stuff in the meantime. So this is it. I've just had all the electrical done and set up the area where I'll be filming with separate studio light switches so I can just come in, flick all of the switches on, and I'm ready to film. This is going to make the process more streamlined and it'll allow me to create more content for you guys. Back here we've got the 3D printers, and this is where I do most of my prototyping, and the 4 printers allow me to test multiple design ideas at once. For instance, I'm currently in the process of designing a round pipe vertical hydroponic system which will use rounded plugs so that anyone in the world can get their hands on some pipe and make themselves a system. Now these are actually the first versions that I've printed for this system, and I'm really excited to show you how this system works. Essentially I've based it on similar designs to the modular stacking hydroponic system. I apologize for the state of me, it is boiling in here. It is 32 degrees in here because I have no installation on the studio yet. So I go through multiple iterations of the design before I get to the final file which I released on the channel to Patreons. There's a heap of mistakes that I make along the way designing them that I have to rectify to make them suitable for you guys to use. But in the end, we get to something pretty damn cool. So I'm really excited to release this system into the wild and let you guys have a go with it, because it's taken a lot of effort, to be frank. But yeah, it's gonna be a banger of a system. I'll release all the files probably this afternoon that I've got so far to the pre-release Patreon. But yeah, just be mindful that they are still in beta and I am playing with the designs. So very exciting stuff to come, and I should be filming that within the next week or so. However, I'll probably be time-lapsing, so I'm aiming for about a month's turnover for that video. And you can see over here is where I've got my propagation at the moment, which I've been timing the seeds so that I have something to put into those systems once I create them in about a week's time. So this is kind of the process I go through. I have to marry up my schedule of design with the schedule of the videoing, and also marry up the propagation stage of the plants. Now, some of these plants are actually going to go straight into the systems outside, which I'm going to clear out hopefully this afternoon, like the tomatoes and the lettuce. But this tray here, this is the herb tray, and I'll be adding that into my vertical herb garden, hopefully within a week. And I've kind of been using this side of the studio as a packing area for some of the orders I've been fulfilling of the 3D printable parts. It's also where I keep upcoming reviews like this Best for LED grow light, which I'll be reviewing very soon, as well as this. This is going to streamline the process of prototyping, but mostly manufacturing parts for you guys. This is the Creality CR30, and it is an endless print mill. It's a conveyor belt 3D printer, which will allow me to essentially print an infinite amount of things as long as you don't run out of filament. So you would use 5 kilogram rolls of filament spool on this, and it would just print whatever you want endlessly, and it'll allow me to not continually maintain 4 printers, and I can free them up for my prototyping of the 3D printable systems that I come up with for you guys. So I'm very excited about this. If you want me to do a review of this or an unboxing or a build, let me know, because I'm tossing up on it and I can't decide whether it's appropriate or not for the channel. I'm pretty excited about it, and it is called Hoochos, so we may well just get that review anyway. Well, I hope you enjoyed the sneak peek of the studio and the 3D printable hydroponic systems, and witnessing all of the problems that I've had throughout my systems and the greenhouse. Happy hydroponicking, and I'll see you next time on Hoochos.